Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Are there any additions or changes to the agenda?
We have one item to remove. It's under the county treasurer update, item A, resolution to adopt a policy for determining surplus for the tax delinquent.
So we need a motion to amend the budget. Is there support? All those in favor say aye. Aye. The agenda is approved as amended. We have the minutes.
I move the regular minutes. I don't see the minutes for the
Oh,
closed session.
closed session. She'll have to print them.
I apologize.
I'm sure they're accurate. I'm not worried. but I'll support the regular minutes.
Come back to that under.
Is there support? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The minutes are approved as amended. We have limited public comments. Or do we have more than 1 minute to approve?
We'll approve those under miscellaneous after she prints them, so we won't hold up the meeting.
So there are limited public comments. Seeing, hearing none, county treasurer's update.
I am required, actually by statute, to make a report on our foreclosure fund every year now to the state, and every 2 years, I believe, was traditionally made to commissioners. So in my transition out of the office, I will be working in the months ahead to do a lot of cleanup on business with you. Part of that is just a brief report on our foreclosure fund. And the foreclosure fund, I should mention, is the restricted funds that we have to keep after we sell properties at the tax auction. Previously, we could pretty much do whatever we wanted with those funds, but no longer we're required to keep them in a restricted account. Now, it is also the fund that we've used to reserve funding for the class action suit that you've heard me talk a lot about over the last few years. We currently have $2.134 million in the foreclosure fund. However, about 1.2 to 1.4 is nearest as we can calculate the amount of that fund that is at risk for claims on this class action suit. So we're in a fortunate position that we do have the funding to pay for those claims coming in to that class action. I have with me this morning Ted Seitz from Dykema. He's done a lot of work for us on our land bank, some terrific work. He also happens to be the lead attorney for the Michigan Association of County Treasurers on all the class action suits that they've been defending, we've been defending over the last few years. But he's really knowledgeable about the class action suit, and I'd like to have him just give a brief update for you on where that is and give you a good idea of how things stand.
Okay, thank you.
It is. It is. It is. And I was going to say that. Yeah, that I didn't want to suck the air out of the room here when I talk about the class action lawsuits. And I guess I'll start with, I don't know, whether you all get the Michigan Association of Counties magazine, but the edition for this month has a story on the Wayside Church class action settlement that this county is involved in, along with kind of globally the tax foreclosure surplus proceeds constitutional takings cases that have been going on in this state against all counties in the state of Michigan for about the past decade. So there's a good summary in there, and then I don't know if any of you are going to the conference for MAC that's scheduled, I think, the last week of September, but there's going to be a presentation there as well on the tax foreclosure cases, kind of the new law that was implemented by our legislature in response to the Supreme Court's Raffaelli versus Oakland decision. So I wanted to tell you about that before I dive into the Wayside Church versus Van Buren and all of the counties in the Western District of Michigan case. So the Wayside Church case was first brought against Van Buren County in 2014. It went up and down to the United States Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals. It dealt with, as it still does, takings claims under the U.S. Constitution, along with other claims saying that surplus proceeds from auctions that were conducted under Michigan's tax foreclosure statute were a takings if there was no path for those former owners of the property to receive the surplus proceeds from the auction. Our state Supreme Court spoke to it first in the Raffaelli versus Oakland case and said that Michigan's former law and practice on that violated the Michigan constitutional takings clause. And then over time, it worked its way up to the United States Supreme Court, this issue, through Minnesota. So Hennepin County is where Minneapolis is located. They had a case before the United States Supreme Court called Tyler versus Hennepin County. Minnesota's law looked a lot like Michigan's before we changed it. And the United States Supreme Court found that Minnesota's law violated the takings clause of the U.S. Constitution. So that's kind of the backdrop for this Wayside Church case that this county was brought into because there was a class action settlement. And it was negotiated with the assistance, and I would say prodding, of the United States Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals Mediation Office. So what the United States Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals has is a mediation office to try to resolve cases if they can be in front of it. Over a 2-year period, the counties in the Western District part of the case, state, including Eaton, were involved in negotiations to see if the parties could reach a class action settlement. And we were able to reach a class action settlement that was approved by the federal court. Judge Maloney, who sits in Kalamazoo, it was given final approval this summer. We have faced significant objections to the class action settlement. The objections are from, I'll call them competing class action counsel. So once these takings cases or this issue kind of came out from the Michigan Supreme Court, there was a rush from class action plaintiffs' counsel to file suits against all of the counties in the state of Michigan, seeking surplus proceeds and other things. And the dollars are large. So the class action settlement that we have in the Wayside case, the total amount of the class fund is over $70 million. I can tell you that throughout the state, the total number for all counties as far as liability is probably somewhere near $200 million. And that doesn't include whatever the state of Michigan is facing, because they also foreclose for certain counties in the state, Livingston being the biggest one. By example, Minnesota has settled a class action they faced after their Hennepin County suit, and they have settled that for $103 million. And that was negotiated with the help of their legislature and their governor, and that's actually being funded by the state of Minnesota. So that's kind of the backdrop. The objectors in this case, it's all about greed, frankly. The lawyers, I mean, they see, potentially tens of millions of dollars. The settlement that we negotiated with the class action counsel in Wayside was a much lower attorney amount, and it was tied to those people that actually made claims. So it wasn't like they were getting a windfall. I mean, they had to have the claims tied to their fees, which will still be significant, but at least they're tied to the claims. There have been an enormous amount of claims made under the Wayside Church class settlement. I do a lot of class action litigation. Typically, the claim rate, so the number of people that submit claims for class settlements, and I'm sure you've all seen where there's a class action settlement, does it get $17 or things like that? Obviously, this settlement, people are getting much larger amounts of money. So the claim rate here, where it's typically 8% in class action settlements, maybe 10% is pretty big. The claim rate here is about 70%, which was a big piece on getting the class settlement approved by Judge Maloney. Because you have to say, is this a fair settlement? Are people positive about the settlement? And because the claim rate was so high, that was one of the big factors that made it so he approved the class action settlement. This class action settlement has been appealed to the United States Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals. Wasn't a surprise. The objectors, again, I mean, they're trying to do anything they can to basically, get funds out of this for themselves, right? So basically, they're trying to hijack the class settlement. They're very bold, but when you throw potentially tens of millions of dollars out there, people are very aggressive. The appeal is, pending in the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals. It's just at its infancy. And I suspect it's gonna take, probably well into 2025, maybe into 2026 before the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals rules on the class action settlement. I'm very confident that they will approve it. If you looked at the opinions relating to this case from courts, several of the objectors' counsel have been sanctioned already, which has been upheld by the Sixth Circuit. So I don't suspect they're going to have a lot of credibility in front of the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals. But what this ultimately means on the settlement being appealed is that under the terms of the settlement, the class action settlement is not effective and money is not due to claimants until all the appeals are worked out. And that could mean, if someone appealed it to the United States Supreme Court or tried to, that could also delay it. So what that means is, as far as for Eaton County and the other counties involved in the settlement, there's no money due to any claimants right now. There's probably not gonna be any money due most of 2025. I would say probably looking at 2026 before the appeals are all kind of worked out and money will be due to claimants. And we've engaged, as is typical, a class action administrator, and they're gonna handle all of, looking at, taking claims, paying settlement checks, and that type of thing. The other piece of this settlement is we have a special master. That's basically, it's a former judge, former Chief Judge Talbot of the Michigan Court of Appeals. And because of the nature of these claims, so we have properties, right, that people, they may have had an owner, but they had also other interest holders in the property, right? And then you have people who may have an estate, and it wasn't really a valid estate. Do they really have an interest? So we have several properties, I shouldn't say several, probably hundreds, where there are multiple claims for the same property. And in the settlement, it was built in, and Judge Maloney approved it, for the special master, former Judge Talbot, to sit as basically, he would be almost like a circuit court judge here, and look at the claims, and he's gonna evaluate, okay, is that a valid claim or not, or who gets what from this claim? I'm gonna allocate this to this person, that to that person. So that's also built into the process for fairness. So that's another piece of it that will maybe delay some payments, even if we work it through the courts and we get a final unappealable order. That's still gonna take some time probably to work out for those properties. I don't know offhand how many, properties we have in Eaton County that have multiple claims, but I know there are some. Yeah.
I would assume a lot of this money is going to end up in the hands of the banks, the people that held the mortgages, correct? I mean, most people that were in that situation probably had a mortgage on their home, so.
Well, that's the interesting thing. The banks.
Of course, that stuff's already settled.
There was a claim deadline, right? So if people haven't submitted their claims, that's long past, so they can't submit late claims. And I have to say that the banks, with a few exceptions, were not aggressive
They missed the boat.
in filing claims. So while there are some claims by banks, it's not as many as one might think. I mean, I would say that most of the claims are just, just normal people, not too many businesses. Although again, these properties are complicated, right? Some of these were owned by former businesses or LLCs, or, properties were owned by out-of-state people in Michigan. Especially the west side of the state, you have, some vacation or other type of properties that went foreclosure that were actually owned by people out of state. So that complicates things. But yeah, the banks, you would think, would be making a ton of claims, but they never really did. So they've kind of missed the boat.
So the claim window has closed. You can't make any more
Yep.
claims. So we know the claims that
Yep.
have been made.
Yep, and in fact, Judge Maloney, there was a motion for him to allow late claims, and he rejected that. I mean, there has to be a deadline.
Right,
So,
yeah.
And so there won't be any more late claims. What there have been is something in class action litigation is called opt-outs. So for fairness, every person that's part of a class action settlement can either make a claim, can either sit quiet, and so they lose their right to making a claim, or they can opt out of the class settlement. They can decide, I don't want to be part of this class settlement. I want to, bring my own claim. I want to, I just don't like class action settlements. So there were a significant amount of opt-outs that were submitted, and though they have brought, in most cases, their own separate case in the Western District of Michigan, Judge Maloney's handling those. I would say 99% of the opt-outs were brought with the objector counsel representing them. So they did it basically designed to try to put another wrench in the class action settlement. So you may be hearing a little bit about that. I know I've kind of thrown a lot out there. Any questions, any timing issues? I do think you're going to hear periodically over the next couple of years in the press more and more about the Wayside Church settlement. You're going to hear about, even though it doesn't affect Eaton and those involved with Wayside Church settlement, there was a case from the Michigan Supreme Court that came out this summer called Schaefer versus Kent County. What it did was it said that the original decision, Raffaelli versus Oakland, was a retroactive decision that had the effect of going back 6 years from 2020, meaning that until 2014, those people can now submit claims for surplus proceeds through Michigan's new law that's in a provision called MCL 21178T to submit surplus proceeds claims. So for the past couple of years, as Treasurer Robinson would tell you, this process has been in place that was unanimously adopted by the Michigan legislature for people to obtain surplus proceeds. So since 2020, for properties that are sold and get surplus proceeds, there is a process that's run through the circuit court for people to make claims and evaluate those claims. So what the Michigan Supreme Court said is, okay, this law that was enacted in 2020 and moving forward, that's going to be the exclusive remedy for those people before 2020 to make claims. So you're going to have that going on in the rest of the state. Again, it won't really impact this county, won't impact all of the counties in the Wayside Church settlement. That's done. That's over. But for every other county in the state of Michigan that's not in the Wayside Church settlement, that's going to impact them. So you may be hearing a little bit about that in the press.
Are all the properties that were foreclosed out or were lost during the 2008, 2009 economic downturn? I mean, that was all because of the inflated property prices. Those aren't included in these two?
No,
Amazing.
just too old, I'll just say that. And that's just too long ago. So really, when it kicks in is 2014.
That could be why the banks were slow to come on, because they were the ones who largely snapped up most of those lost properties in that period of time.
Right. Banks and, I mean, again, interest holders and properties, I mean, that runs the gamut. I mean, frankly, you have the IRS, right? They have some interest in properties. The state of Michigan has some interest in properties. They have not made claims, and in fact, they were excluded from the settlement anyway. Yeah, so it's somewhat complicated. I think the U.S. Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals did the best they could to try to make it uncomplicated. There's a lot that has happened over the past couple years with different cases and a new law, so that's kind of changed the dynamic at times a little bit. But at the end of the day, the Wayside Church settlement has been a big savings, I think, ultimately, to the counties that were involved in it. And as I said, I think I'm fairly positive it's going to hold up in the U.S. Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals.
Any other questions?
Thank you for coming by.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Ted. Everything you wanted to know about tax foreclosure. And one of the reasons I felt was important to provide you with a thorough update is that I've had a lot of media inquiries over the last few weeks. Most of them that are a result of some of the budget issues that have impacted the county, and the calls I've been getting are such that, you guys are on the hook for all these millions in tax foreclosure. How is that going to affect the county's budget problems? It's been refreshing to be able to say it won't, because we have that reserve. And then, of course, the story usually dies at that point. But if you are contacted in that regard, I think that would be the best reply. But other than that, I'm happy to answer any questions or move on with the investment report.
Any? Thanks for all the information.
You bet. You also have my latest investment report. It's pretty brief. There are really no changes in the investment report. We call it an investment report, but it's not really like we have investment funds around here, right? So for the most part, our investments are in bank earnings, interest earnings, and CD earnings. That's reported on the report as well. We continue to do pretty well with the interest rates that we have. Unfortunately, as everyone knows, even those higher interest rates are not keeping with the increasing costs. So we do the best we can. But I'm happy to answer any questions on the investment report if there are any.
Is there any questions, concerns? No.
Great. Thank you
You're
very
welcome.
much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Always a pleasure when you're brief.
That way, Joe.
Human Services?
Good morning, everybody. So we do have a number of items to cover today. I probably won't end up being as brief, but I will do my best. We'll start out with the positions update. So as you can see in your packet, I did try to do something different this month. We had some questions. Commissioner Brayler was wondering how the youth facility recruitment was going, so I tried to break them up in a separate segment so you can kind of visually see youth facility within the trial courts. I'm happy to report, I think Jeremy's doing a great job in terms of the 14 positions that were authorized by this body for youth specialists for the expansion. At this point, there's 13 that have not been filled, but all the prior vacancies of previously budgeted positions have. This is directly related to what we did in bargaining. A lot of that's come from getting people who were on call to convince them to go full-time. And part of that was the fact that we made that contract more viable than it was before. So we still have our work cut out for us, but that's a new change you'll see there. Then we've got, just generally speaking, we've got the continuing retention and recruitment issues with attorneys. I know the prosecutor's office was given 1 FTE last year, and we had somebody leave in April, and we've been unable to fill that. And we have the same thing in the public defender's office too, where we've got 3 openings there. So as we continue to look at what we're doing, those are ones that stand out. Sheriff's Department update, jail has 1 correction deputy opening. That was due to a clerical error, should have been authorized in July. There were 3 people that turned over in a short period of time, and I missed one, but they've still been accepting applications and reviewing people, but I wanted to bring it up to get authorized today. And a corrections clerk. Those are the only 2 recommendations that we have for positions this month, or just the 2. I think that goes to show the work we've been doing through bargaining and the work this body's put forward, committing to the workforce is paying off. We have less turnover, so good job. So we filled 3 positions this month, have 12 posted online, with 6 being ongoing requisitions between Sheriff's Office, Youth Facility, and seasonal hiring at Parks. The Park seasonals will be coming down later this afternoon, and those 2 positions are what we're recommending. The detail breakdown for jail, we still have the 2 EMT vacancies, and again, the example, struggling to attract and retain employees with EMT qualifications, not just shared by us, but everybody in the healthcare field. Road Patrol update, there are currently 11 deputy vacancies in the Road Patrol Division. We had 2 retirements that are occurring in September, and they're reflected in that report. But we did have a new deputy graduate the academy and entered field training this month, so that puts us at 6 that are in field training. Of that, 5 should be done by October, November, and the newest one should be done by January. Future outlook, we've got 2 road patrol members that we know will probably retire within now and the end of 2024. But we've got a good pipeline in place. We've got 4 sponsorship candidates at Kellogg Community College, should graduate mid-December, and if they're successful, they'd complete FTO in April or May. And then we have another 7 in LCC, Lansing Community College, and if successful, those folks would also be mid-December graduating, completing FTO in April or May of next year. If all of that's successful, will only be 2 positions down in the Sheriff's Department come May of next year. And big undertaking, so I tip my hat to the Sheriff's Office and this last pool of candidates. The quality and the commitment to law enforcement is just, it's at a level that we haven't had since prior to 2020, so. But from a patrol standpoint, the 11 positions down and 6 positions in FTO, that means it's equivalent of 17 spots down because the FTO folks have to ride along in another vehicle. So we still have some work to do, but we've got the pipeline moving. Any questions on positions?
I'll move the recommendations.
It's been moved and supported. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passes.
Excellent. Next on to Parks Department restructure. This is something that's coming recommended from Public Works and Planning. We had some good discussion at that meeting, so wanted to make sure this body also gets the opportunity to. The restructure is listed in the packet, both with a short memo and then kind of org chart of showing what it would look like. What we have found is we've had high turnover in the director position at the Parks Department, and part of it is we have a structure that's been in place since 2008 when cuts were made to that department, and after recovery from the recession and finally getting a millage, there was not really a structural change done that empowered the Parks Department to, I think, deliver on the commitment the county made for dealing with a backlog of maintenance and deferred maintenance in the parks, and then also increasing programming and developing parks projects. So this restructure was born out of discussions with the work group, the Parks Work Group, and the Policy Committee, and coordination between Chad Powers, our Facilities Director, Claudine Williams, our Intergovernmental Affairs Director, and the new Parks Director, Alex. So based on that, the recommendation is that the operations and groundskeeping would be a duty that rests with the Facilities Department, the same as it is for every other team. And then capital improvement and executing projects would be done in coordination between the Parks Director and the Facilities Director, same way it is right now. Like if dispatch needs to have work done at their facility, they don't go out and procure it themselves. They work with Chad through the budget process, and it's part of the capital improvement plan. So that's the vision that we have for this, since we already duplicate that work with facilities doing groundskeeping for the rest of the county. And then having programming, invasive species and land management, and kind of the strategic management of developing the parks, that will continue to rest with the Parks Director. And we made it clear at the policy committee, but this doesn't mean these groups won't collaborate. They will be working in the same offices, hand in hand. If there's a storm, they'll both be shoulder to shoulder cleaning up our parks. The difference just is how we budget and manage our projects and groundskeeping. So welcome questions or, yeah.
Yes. Terrence?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I won't talk too much about this because I think most of the people, I think everybody in this room was here on Wednesday for the most part, but I'm very supportive of this change. I know it's early on in our new director's tenure here, but just based on his experience elsewhere and where we were headed before he started, I think this is the change that's going to help keep him here, hopefully, and the rest of our team here long term. So I'm very supportive of this move. I just have a question. Are I don't see any numbers attached to this, or is there a budget amendment at the end of the?
It's a great question. So today would be asking for authorization to send 3 reclassifications to municipal consulting to evaluate. And if they come back and say the change in job descriptions, we would come with an amendment.
So this is just to start the process, and then we'll get the actual cost of the next, hopefully next month or sometime soon after that.
Correct.
Okay, all right, great, thank you.
Good question.
Jeannie?
Okay, so, under the parks millage, the cost to do the grounds maintenance was on the parks millage. But now we're gonna change the grounds maintenance and put it under Chad, correct?
No, budgetarily speaking, work that's conducted in parks will charge to parks.
Oh, okay.
So one of the things that we did when we got the parks millage to better get a sense where our resources were getting spent, we built out GL codes, which is a way to still bill the Parks Department, but we built one for each park. So we're trying to get better at tracking. If it's parks work, it's billed to parks. If it's anything else, it's going to continue to be billed in Chad's normal budget.
Okay, so that's what I was asking. So the money's gonna follow the task at hand?
Correct,
It's
yeah.
not- It's, okay.
And it's possible in the future there might be like opportunities for buying equipment where it could get split because there's no sense in the county buying 2 levelers for doing road work. If we know that we're going to use it at other facilities and at parks, we might be able to do a split rather than just both departments buy. So that's kind of the part of what we found is there were redundancies in our contracted services and also in procurement of equipment. So if there's ever anything where it's like a shared piece, it would be shared in a budgetary sense too.
So going forward, when we get a report on Chad's budget, we'll also have a subset that we would get a report on the cost of the tasks that are being done under Chad, but in our parks, right?
So when you say report, do you mean like financial reporting out of this body or like?
Yeah, so we know how the millage is operating.
Yeah.
Going forward, we'll know, because right now, we've known, this is the millage, this is the parks budget. But if we start splitting it, we're gonna need to know how it's working, and, I mean,
I'll pivot to our financial guru, Melissa.
Okay, so every month, your Public Works and Planning is presented with a parks financial report. So what I would think would make the most sense is to include that with Chad's public improvement, just as a informational piece, not anything that would potentially change between Public Works and Planning and then our committee meeting here. Does that make sense? Because they will be the same amount for the parks millage information, because that is reported, the finances are reported at Public Works and Planning.
but at the same time, we'll still have things happening under the actual parks.
I think,
Yeah.
so any work that's done for parks will be charged to parks.
Okay.
So it is separate from what will be in the facilities budget. So we won't have any crossover. If something's done for any other county property, it's charged to the general fund or the department that it's in. Same thing with parks. So there won't be any crossover. The only thing Ben was saying is that if we were able to share purchasing, better purchasing power, That's it. But everything that goes to parks will be charged to parks
Okay.
and only parks expenditures.
I think, Joe, you had a question?
Yeah, I'm just curious how far we're gonna take this. Because you could, if the argument is that we're going to maximize our purchasing power, and so if we're gonna buy a piece of equipment for the grounds around here, and we might use it for parks, why parks can help by contributing some of the monies towards the cost. Are we gonna do that with IT? I suspect that our IT people are working with parks. And so there would be a corresponding amount of time that would be generated by them. Are we going to bill parks for that? Because you can, what I see is a real opportunity here to, and I'm not by any stretch of the imagination suggesting that we do this. I would be opposed to it, quite frankly. But I see an opportunity to say, hey, there's a pile of money sitting over there in parks from that millage, and they don't need all of it, and we can start buttressing some of the other county programs by essentially billing them for the time. I mean, we have a similar contract with the health department, quite frankly, for IT. Are we going to have one with parks?
No, because the parks are operated by the county health department is through the Board of Health. The way that we deal with facilities with any other funding source, so any other special revenue fund, we have what's called a cost allocation plan. That plan splits out costs. So to any grants or to any other special revenue funds, we would charge facilities, and we also charge the technology.
Will we charge parks for the IT work?
We do that now. So when it was in the general fund, it was just a general fund expense. So right now we have, and I want to say that in the last cost allocation plan, it was 94,000,
98.
98,000. I was close. So, but we've been doing that for years on any fund. So this isn't going to be to take money from the parks to supplement anything that's being done that should be done in the general fund. It's going to be only to have Chad manage what's being done in the parks rather than to have the director not focus on programming and parks work. So it's just to assist. It's not going to do that cross. And we can ensure that the board sees that the expenditures that go through the parks special revenue fund, the millage fund, that those are strictly to parks. If we can give a line item and invoice transaction, any journals, to show you that that's not happening. And it's a good idea to do that, to make sure that you're monitoring that.
Yeah, it would be up to the committee, just like any other, to make sure that, when those financial reports are given, that we, we're asking those questions if we see something
Correct.
that is out of the ordinary. So I see it just as kind of how we've been doing things anyways with other special funds.
Yes.
So how much are we billing the parks for? You said 98,000 for IT. What else is the county getting reimbursed for at this point?
So
How much?
the cost allocation plan is just 98,000 for parks, but that includes any transactions that come out of the treasurer's office, the controller's office, IT, and facilities. Facilities wouldn't have had anything in parks previously.
All right.
Does that make sense? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Yes, Terry?
I would, so the motion here is to begin the reclassification process?
Yes.
Would that be? Then that's what I will make.
Or
Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No,
Who said no? Did someone?
I said no.
Oh, okay.
I'm just, You still like me, don't you, Barb?
I got it.
We were doing so well there for such a long time.
So next up, we have our last tentative agreement with our last union group. This is the Central Dispatch Supervisory Group. This tentative agreement's in line with the same structural changes, economic changes we've implemented with the other groups. These financial increases, as well as the other ones, are included in this year's budget that is going to be reviewed later in this meeting as well. So I will go through the summary. Since we've done 6 of these so far, we weren't going to do a closed session because we've talked through these. And again, we've tried to approach bargaining from a very uniform process and consistent from one group to the other, both because it makes it easier for us to manage and administrate those, but then also because it's better for the morale of the groups when you try to be consistent. So first proposal is general cleanup, non-substantive technical changes. It's just removing the reference of gender throughout the agreement. Article 5 salaries includes a one-time bonus for all current bargaining unit employees, plus the option of a higher step based on parameters for hiring external employees and the language governing process for overpayment corrections if there's ever a payroll error in alignment with the state of Michigan rules. Number 3 was disciplinary action update. This is just making it easier to read and defining the process for employee statements if they're gathered. That's a technical change. Article 8, hours of work overtime, created opportunities for employees to volunteer for non-call volume events with less than 24-hour notice. Again, this is if a training opportunity is available, we're not going to pull somebody on double time to do that. But if we put it out there and somebody wants to take it, they can, but they're not going to get double time trigger. They still get double time if it's a call event type thing where they're called in.
Hey, Ben, if you
Yeah.
could, while you're going through these, is it possible for you to just say if there's anything that's different from any of our other contracts? Just to
Yeah.
point it out, because again, trying to get
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yep, that was the same with the non-soup group, and so these 2 groups have unique call demands, so it was consistent for these groups. Seniority, this is unique to this group, but we added an additional 1 hour of pay if a supervisor's working a training assignment and they're the only supervisor present because they're doing multiple duties. Previously, they got 3 hours, they'll get up to 4, but the 4th is only triggered if literally they're the only supervisor on the floor at the time. Leave of absences, sick leave, this is the same thing that we did with other groups and the same thing that we did with the non-soup dispatch group. Holidays, same thing we did with the non-soup dispatch group. It's just adding Juneteenth and locking Easter in on Sunday instead of it being a floating holiday. We decide each year if it's a Friday or a Sunday. Article 14, same accrual changes that we've done with every other group. Formalized a 2-week notice requirement for eligibility and payouts. This was in every other contract. The agreement had a 4-week provision that was intent language. So we just settled on the same that we do with other groups. Pension benefits, there's a 2% reduction in the pension cost. We added the same, and that's the same thing we did with the non-soup group. We added the cost sharing for retirees' health, the same thing we did for groups that have that benefit for current employees that haven't retired yet. And then payouts at time of separation and the healthcare savings relationship. We added the required language for IRS compliance, same as we did everywhere else. Talked about the pension piece. Article 15, just clean up. Longevity, this is the same longevity plan that was put in for each group. This kind of memorializes the retention bonuses that we had through the wake of COVID, but it builds it into the existing longevity structure. The elimination of gender, emergency declaration language, rest of it's the same, and then 5% cost of living adjustment, which does not catch us up to the rate of inflation by any stretch of the imagination, but knowing that our employees had gotten hit incredibly hard, and that's why we were having issues. That 5%'s been consistently what we've done across the board, because if we're gonna have people, we gotta be able to pay them enough to stay. And that's the summary.
Are there any other questions?
in the requested action would be approval and moving.
I move the agreement.
Is there support? Okay, Brian. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passes.
All right.
Accepted, okay? What's next?
So next is health insurance report, which we're going to do a little differently because we have health insurance discussions under the HR. So I'm going to pivot to Melissa and then she'll pivot back to me.
All right, so I have your monthly health insurance report this month, and I did include a projection through the end of this fiscal year as we are coming up on the end of the year. As you can see, our expenses are substantial still, and they continue to be something that we monitor. My projections, based on everything that I have seen, we are going to be approximately $111,000 over our revenues in that fund. So that is a discussion point for later as part of our budget amendment process as well. I did include the full packet of your health insurance report so you can see all the breakdown of the expenses for prescription drug coverage and our stop loss. The only group that has hit stop loss coverage is our active group. And then I did also include our retirees' health insurance report at the very end, so that you can see the impact that our Medicare Advantage program has made. You can see in this, our July amounts were not substantially different than prior months. That is because of a run-out period for those, for that group transitioning to our Medicare Advantage program. And then we did have costs as well for the monthly payment for that program. So, are there any questions on the health insurance reports? Okay. That concludes my health insurance reports then.
So then back to me, I would say we're currently out to bid, which is a process that the county goes through, I believe, every 3 years. Is that correct? So we do bids on insurance, dental, vision, Medicare Advantage now since we added that as something that we buy. So we're waiting reception of those bids. And then Brown & Brown will get them and then help summarize and then work with staff. So hopefully by next meeting, we'll have an update about who we think would be the best carrier going forward. Very positive interactions with Blue Cross, but always good to go out to market to make sure you're shopping the best you can. Yeah.
Just out of curiosity, do we know what we projected for an increase in our budget?
Our budgetary increase, I believe, was a 7% increase
Okay.
year over year.
And I'm not sure if it's, I don't know what how Delta does theirs, but the clerk informed us that they had an 18% increase this year from their carrier. I don't know if it's apples to apples, but bigger, much
talk
bigger
about-
increase than they had in the past, so.
Well, that's the next thing, part of what, next thing we'll talk about is,
Oh, was that a good segue for you?
it is. So, the controller's office has the authority to make a rider change, and we're in the process of doing it, but we wanted to bring this pharmaceutical piece up here just so that you all could have discussion and that you're aware. But there's been a development where many of us are familiar. So we've got the high claims Melissa's talking about, driving up our insurance expenses. And as a self-funded plan, the rules governing our ability to manage our plans are different than if we bought through the marketplace in a premium model. So we have identified a category of pharmaceutical spends that have been contributing to our increases in claims. So this is related to the weight loss drug phenomenon that everybody remembers, where it was discovered diabetes medication had a benefit where it could also be used as a weight loss. That was curbed quickly once identified that people were using it for that. Provisions were put in place that you had to be a diabetic. But that led to the development of a class of weight drugs that became classified as GLP-1 drugs, which for our coverage fell under our elective lifestyle drug coverage that the county has previously offered. Administration's recommendation and what we're doing is eliminating elective lifestyle drugs. We still continue to provide medical pieces, but This would impact dietary supplements, not IVF, but a fertility treatment, which again is like a supplement, and an impotence class of drugs. It's a pretty marginal group. The bulk of the spenders in this category is the weight loss piece. But what we found as we've been examining what's going on with our claims is that this category of elective drugs went from 313,000 last year to 554 this year. So over a $200,000 change. We have set up reporting to where if there's more than a $5,000 change, we will get notified so that we can hopefully catch this stuff sooner. But the rider we're looking to implement would just eliminate that category altogether. It's an option for a self-funded plan. Blue Cross Blue Shield on their private insurance is eliminating it at the first of the year. The projection is that this change would save us $391,000 over a whole year period. I'll add to this, as we had discussions back and forth, this is an example where I think we need much-needed federal reforms, but these drugs, if you buy them directly from the company, employees would pay $500. If you buy it through Blue Cross Blue Shield, it's upwards of $1,500 that they charge us. And they've got a rebate, but at the same time, those rebates don't end up, as you can see, canceling out the overage that gets charged to the insurance company, AKA to us. So I welcome questions. We tried to talk about it a lot before we made this recommendation.
Jill?
Well, I guess there's two things. My first concern is in those situations where someone is determined to be, I will use the term obese, by their doctors and their need to lose weight because they have other underlying medical problems that's exacerbating. Are they going to be, they're going to have to pay out of their pocket then for this because we've eliminated these drugs, these weight loss supplements from coverage?
Yeah, so that would be, we would be eliminating as of October 1st. I'm happy to sit down and talk to anybody about alternatives, like including using the flex spending account if you don't already utilize it. Put money aside out of every paycheck so that you can get tax-free money towards your medical expenses.
I don't have any real problem not paying for somebody who weighs 175 and wants to be 165. I mean, I don't really care about that particularly. But I do care if, you know, I mean, for the last, I don't know, 15, 20 years, we keep hearing about how all these things exacerbate other conditions and diabetes and various other problems. And so I guess I'm concerned that, and there's a vast group of people that fit into that group, and that's one of the things that is driving healthcare costs. And so we're taking a piece out of this to save money. And so the other thing, I guess I'm puzzled, you say they're charging us $1,500 and they're charging the average, the person $500?
Yep.
Is that's?
Is that legal? It currently is.
Well,
Is
it may be legal, but I'm really surprised because I'll go back and I've told this story years ago, so some of you have heard it. I mean, I had a brother who didn't have health insurance, and I did. And we both had major surgery in 2007. In January 2007, he was bankrupted because they chased him, everybody chased him for every dime. And my insurance paid probably about 40 or 50% of what they claimed to be their costs, and I paid zero. So if that's true, that's finally headed in the right direction, but it certainly wasn't true before.
Yeah, the couple things that's helpful, we do have a coaching program for weight loss built into our current benefits package. If somebody needs it for a medical reason, that's different. And I will say this, even though we're making this change today, I would not be surprised within 9 months that those drugs find their way to being alternative treatments for, is it COPD when you have difficulty breathing or sleep apnea, in which case they will find their way right back into our formulary. So this isn't even necessarily right. Once it changes from a lifestyle elective drug to a treatment drug. We don't have the ability to not fund it. The other thing is, these are treatments that are lifetime. So what they've found in experimentation is that folks that go on them and go off, they regain the weight. And so for folks that are committed to this being part of their elective strategy for maintaining a healthy weight, it's a lifetime expenditure that they're going to be looking at. So hopefully through the coaching program, and if they have questions about what they can do, we can help them utilize our other benefits. But this is where we're at right now.
Wait a minute, Jeannie, then Jim.
I just want to make a statement that I spent yesterday with a nurse, long-term nurse, 26 years at Sparrow. And she won her case to get a use of one of those type drugs. Can't even remember the name of it. But anyway, those that are already on it until January 1st will still be able to continue with those drugs. But after January 1st, a system of 4,000 some odd people are not doing it.
For us, we're effective October 1st because we don't have to wait because we're self-funded. As of January 1st, Blue Cross is eliminating it statewide.
Because they got Blue Cross.
And I'll tell you, we did talk to them and I said, are you guys sitting down and negotiating with the company? Like, are they concerned they're about to lose market access to all of Blue Cross Blue Shield customers in Michigan? And they're not. The company is unmoved by, so that's why Blue Cross is eliminating it, is because the company just is not moving off of what they consider to be the market value for their drug. Which is unfortunate, because Joe's point, that could really be beneficial to the US if it was affordable and available, and it could have benefits in people being able to sleep, people's heart health, you name it, across the board. So we're not happy to be here doing this, but at the same time, if we didn't, the estimate was that it would do a 4% increase. Just this would be 4% on our premiums next year, or our cost next year on all employees. And that's difficult with everything else that we're dealing with right now, especially if they can get it for $500 directly from the provider. It's one of the tough calls I think we have to make.
Oh, Jim?
Yeah, interesting that this has come up because I've seen several articles regarding these drugs, and I don't know whether it's true or not. It's just articles and some TV stuff that came up about side effects for these drugs, and some of them are life-altering, where they damage their intestines and the stomach. CBS just a couple of weeks did a morning show on this, and I was shocked at some of the things that the people have to go through now for the rest of their life. So if that is true, it's going to be costly for those, situations where now they're going to have to be on a drug to keep themselves, just healthy enough to function in life for the rest of their life. So it appears that that's another factor of these drugs. So.
Any other questions or comments? Yes, Joe.
Well, your comments, Jim, remind me that one of the problems I have with society today is that if your wrist hurts, take a drug. If your back hurts, take a drug. If you've got scaly skin, take a drug.
Got side effect from a drug, take a drug.
And yeah, exactly. I mean, there's drugs out there. If you're not feeling very well mentally, you can take the drug. But one of the potential side effects is suicidal thoughts. I mean, it's amazing. We as a society, quite frankly, we want the quick fix, and so from that standpoint, everything that Ben says that is an alternative to taking the drug to lose weight is probably preferable. I will, again, give an example in my own life. I have a regular physical, and several years ago, quite a few years ago now, my bad cholesterol was slightly above the rate. And the doctor wanted me to take a drug. and I didn't want to take it, and he got mad at me. And he said, I can give you a drug and you're fine. You can do whatever you want. I said, well, you know, I've looked at it, and if I eat a little better than I eat now and I exercise a little more than I exercise now, I don't need the drug. And he was very upset with me, but that's what I did. I didn't take the drug, and I'm still here, so evidently that worked. So yeah, I certainly understand. I'm not in favor, I've never been in favor of, if you got a problem, take a drug. And you know, unfortunately, there's an awful lot of people out there, and we are really being conditioned by all the advertisements and the pharmaceutical companies to rely on the fact that for whatever problem we may have, there's a drug out there that'll make us feel a whole lot better. And so in order for the things that Ben's talking about in the alternative, which I personally think are preferable, we're going to have to, as a society, restructure our thought process considerably, because that's in opposition to everything you see. If you watch anything on TV for anything longer than an hour, you're going to see drug advertisements. That and gambling seem to be the two things that are sustaining, TV. So anyway.
And I'll, just to add to that is, through our Blue Cross 365 coverage, I use this. It's, you can get a gym membership pass. It's a lot like Silver Sneakers, what retirees have access to. But I pay $29 a month, and I get access to thousands of gyms nationwide. So I have a membership at a gym in Charlotte, one in East Lansing, one in Lansing, and I pay $29 a month. And the way it works is they bill that program when you go in to use it. But for a lot of people that are like, well, I don't want to get stuck, there are alternatives. And so staff wants to help folks be able to navigate what those are, whatever their choice is. But
Ben goes to the gym for me.
I was just gonna ask how many of those you use a day.
let's just say I probably don't get my $29 worth right now over the past 3 months, but I'm trying.
So can we have a report in the next few months as to how many more you've joined?
Absolutely, I could do that.
My understanding was you didn't need action. This was more of an informational piece for the board.
We don't need an action, but if this body was moved, just in concurrence with the administration, that we understand the plight and the health objectives of staff, but at this time, we support making this change in our coverage. Something to that effect would be nice.
Could I be smart and say something? You know, it's very good therapy to go out in the garden and pull your weeds.
Oh, yeah. Barbara's got a great garden.
Beautiful garden.
Are you offering exercise classes in your backyard?
It's not allowed to anymore.
You can, you get up and down and all of that good stuff, and yeah.
That was the first approval she got from the doctor, was
Oh.
to get out in her garden, right?
Oh. If you've never done it, I'm a very good instructor. Okay, and I know a weed from a flower, okay? All right, now we gotta get back to business.
Yeah, I mean, I'm supportive of the change. I don't, again, if you need to feel more comfortable having a resolution, I'd be happy to do that.
Support it. Yeah, well, we take a motion.
I'll do that then.
Okay, is there support?
Or
All those, is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? It passes. Okay.
Joe, I'm proud of us. We didn't take this into a greater healthcare discussion, which we usually do, so.
And then I got one other update, which is not on the agenda, but our active violence trainings are going really well. We'll have our third one this month. We've been doing them quarterly, so I want to thank partnership from Grand Ledge Fire Department and the Charlotte PD and the Sheriff's Office. Those have been great opportunities, and departments are signing their new hires up for it, which is kind of the intended piece. So our plan is to still offer those quarterly next year. And then you all had processed tourniquet purchases. We've got the tourniquets into all county vehicles, and we're at the point of working with facilities to get them installed in individual offices. So God forbid there were ever an event that they were necessary, they will be placed throughout the county for access. So I want to thank you guys for the support with that, and we'll continue working on that.
Okay,
And then I'm done
you're done?
for now.
Financial director? Oh,
All
All right, so I will start with an update for the committee on our audit corrective action plan. We are currently actively working with our accounting firm, preparing for fiscal year end. Part of that preparation is the fiscal year end projection for you, which is included later. But in total, we are continuing to move along, and confident that we will not have the same audit issues that we did last couple of years. So, next I have our child care fund report. Nothing has substantially changed in that. We have experienced quite significant expenses in our state ward and county chargeback expenses. However, we did have some savings that we could use in our institutional care line item. So we'll continue to monitor that, but unfortunately, that expense is not something we can control.
The childcare fund balance, a lot of that is, we were anticipating maybe using some money in regards to the expansion of the juvenile care facility. Do we have any idea how much of that money that we're going to tap in, or?
As of right now, are you talking about the expansion of the facility costs, or are you talking about the expansion of the staffing?
So I think, if I can step in, I think what Commissioner Brailer is asking is, we have 1.7 million, and in prior years, we would transfer or not do the complete transfer from the general fund. What we did this year is we eliminated, for the 24-25 budget, we eliminated a $1.5 million transfer for next year. So we would need that fund balance in order to ensure that we can fund the full child care fund without a general fund contribution.
So we're still anticipating using the 1.7 million essentially to,
For next year, though.
okay.
Sorry, Melissa.
No, thank you. Are the
We didn't have to take any out of this for the overruns, for any overruns for the facility.
correct? So that concludes my child care fund report. And then I also have a updated projection for you. We did change a little bit. Our expenses did not substantially change. We're just continuing to review the expenses for things such as building improvements and such. Revenues are continuing to come in. They're slow and steady, but things are looking appropriate. Are there any questions on this report? Okay, well then that concludes my reports.
I'll just say that when Melissa and I were going through this this week, and it was a lot of work for her, when we were going through it, we did note that some revenues do come in later, so we're getting to the end of September. The projection that we did was conservative, and the projection that we did with expenditures was conservative. What you're going to see later in the packet are budget amendments to ensure that we don't have any overages. But what we talked about this morning is that we want to continue between today and next Wednesday to ensure that our projections are looking better. And then we may need additional budget amendments for Wednesday. So you'll approve some today, but with your approval at that time, we'd like to ensure that we have the availability to make any other amendments, because this is our final opportunity to make year-end amendments. So, sorry, Melissa, and then we can move on.
Thank you. And that actually concludes my reports.
Before you finish, just to,
Yes.
and I
We
mean,
want
you,
to take a break or go on?
Barb, Aaron has a question.
I just want to, just real quick, just for Melissa, just for my comfort level, so talking about the audit corrective action, so one of the issues that we had, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but there were some entries, journal entries that didn't get done until after the fiscal year. Are we confident that we're in a position to have all of those completed this year?
So they were entered after the download was sent to the auditors, which is not done until December.
Okay,
So that is done in September or December, not in September. But
Okay.
yes, I am confident that that will be done.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Take a break.
She did that. So we're back on. Chad's up.
It's, oh, way down. Okay, good. We're down to public improvements.
All set? Okay, good morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
I'm gonna skip over the youth facility, do some of the smaller projects, and then we'll skip back or circle back to the youth facility. So, some of the smaller projects, 911 dispatch room is complete. We're still waiting on some blinds to arrive, but that all went pretty seamlessly, so they've moved back in there and things are going well. In the lower level of the same building, we took an old locker room, I think I reported last month, that they were not using, turned it into a lactation room. That is also complete. The construction codes renovation with community development, resource recovery, and veteran services also complete. We're down to a few punch list items there. They've moved in and occupied the space, and it seems to be a good adjustment of the space and more efficient use of it compared to what we had before. Also, we're wrapping up our year end, so a lot of the internal projects, the concrete replacements we're looking at, and the site improvements around here. And next week, we will be doing our second annual, or the semi-annual landfill monitoring, so that'll comes into Public Works and Planning, but I just wanted to report that that's coming up, so that report will be coming in October, November. So back to the youth facility. So we are substantially completed on the expansion side, down to punch list items, and so that there was kind of two parts of the project: the expansion, which was the major piece, and then the interior renovations of some of the existing spaces, which we run into a little bit of a hiccup with permitting through the Bureau of Fire Services, the way they wanted the jobs separated. We didn't find that out till the 11th month so they had to reboot and resubmit. So they won't give us occupancy on the new expansion side until we get this ironed out in order to start the interior renovations. So we ran into a little hiccup, but we've Jeremy and his team, we've found some ways to work around. We're gonna move some of the kids into the community-based treatment area, which is currently not open. We're gonna open that space up, use that temporarily while we work on the interior piece of that, while we get this permitting figured out. We did meet with the Granger's financial team as well as our financial team earlier this week, and satisfied after that meeting that we'll meet all the requirements financially of the grant prior to 9/30 as we were obligated. So, and I know that Controller's Office has reached out to State Representative Angela Whitworth for an extension. I don't know what the status is of that, but should we need to extend that beyond our October 1 deadline. Yeah, other than that, I know a few commissioners have asked to do a tour now that we're substantially complete with the new expansion, and if reach out to me, we can do a one-on-one or we can do a group tour. I do know that Logan is working on a ribbon cutting ceremony. I believe he's shooting for the October 16th, just prior to our October board meeting. So you'll see more communication on that. But if anybody wants to take a tour, reach out and we can go over there anytime, so. Any questions?
Yes, Terrence.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It just, Chad, you still think that we'll be good? Obviously, we're working on a Plan B in case that we don't hit those requirements by 9:30, but in your mind, based on your conversation with the inspecting agency in Granger, you think we'll be good to go?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any others?
That concludes my update. Thank you.
Okay. Budget?
So I will take the budget amendments. So because of the fiscal year-end projections, we have some updated budget amendments this month. So the first one is a clerical change. The county clerk's office had election workers. We had originally budgeted them for professional services line item, but due to the number of hours that they would likely work, we paid for them out of wages and fringes. So that is that change there. The next budget amendment is regarding our a couple of vehicles that got totaled this last fiscal year. So we need to account for the payoff to our lease program as well as the insurance proceeds that we received from our insurance carrier. The next is for our Parks Department, and to increase the wages and fringes due to the interim director as well as some overtime and additional temporary employees that were working in the parks during that transition time period. The next one is for the American Rescue Plan Act. So this is a budget amendment request because we originally requested the funds in December of 2022. I had anticipated doing a budget amendment again for a carry forward because we did the full budget back in 2022, knowing that we would have to amend the budget for this current fiscal year. And I forgot to do that back in December of 2023. So this is not an expansion of the programs. It is just accounting for those programs that have already been approved. The next is, again, from the American Rescue Plan Act. Our interest revenue from that fund is not required to be kept in that fund. We could have chosen to deposit that interest revenue into our general fund. However, to keep the fund together for ease of reporting, it was included in the American Rescue Plan Act fund. So we are requesting to use some of those monies, actually all of the interest earnings for the current fiscal year, to fortify our health insurance fund, as well as there's some drain assessments for the drain at large, which have come in larger than historical. We did account for the changes for future fiscal year, so there was an increase in our current budget for 24-25, but we do need to account for it as well for the current fiscal year. And it would be an up to amount for these, and only transferring what is needed to make sure that both of those accounts are whole. Yes.
So in regards to the health insurance, we make this change, and then we'll actually show, you were estimating, I think, 100 and some thousand, 101 or 102,000 short. We would actually show a positive balance of about 70,000.
So if we transferred all of that fund, all of the revenue, yes. However, I would be only anticipating ensuring the fund is whole. So if projections are accurate, I would only be transferring 111,000, leaving the remaining funds available for future use.
Well, this says 185, so we would
Yes.
give you authorization, so that's what you're saying? you-
Correct.
Authorization,
Up to 185,000.
okay.
Are there any other questions?
And just note that, as I stated before, in the event that we find anything else between now and Wednesday's board meeting, we'd like to bring that to the full board. So if the motion could include that, would be appreciated.
So moved.
He took care of it, Barbara.
It's been moved and supported. Any discussion? None? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Okay? Oh. Okay, so, any other budget amendments or?
No, but under miscellaneous, we did have the closed session minutes that we didn't have printed. So if we could get a motion to approve those.
So moved.
Or,
It's been moved and supported. All those in favor say aye. Opposed?
Pass 2-0.
It's
It was
approved.
bipartisan.
Good.
Okay, now,
Next is the bills.
the bills, shall we pay the bills?
Pay the bills.
Is there support?
Support.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We'll pay the bills.
Sure.
Okay, budget and winter tax rates. Yes,
Could I jump back to miscellaneous just briefly? I got a question for the controller's office and the budget. On social media, when former President Trump came to Potterville to Alro Steel, there were not a lot, but there was some activity about how much money the county spent on that rally. And other than normal road patrol and sheriff patrol that would be required for such an event, was there any additional money spent on that rally?
So, yes, we do not have that figure now, but the sheriff's department comes out in full force, as did Potterville and other community police agencies. So we asked the sheriff's department, Central Dispatch was asked to be in attendance. I think there was a little work from emergency management. So everyone was to put in it's a code that we use for that. And we should have that information. We may have it by Wednesday, I think, so we could report on that if you'd like.
Okay, yeah,
What
that'd
it
be
is, and
fine.
then
Just
any amount we would then submit as a bill. Not likely gonna get it back. I mean, it's like any event, like I said to people, if Taylor Swift came, we'd wanna do the same, so.
okay, I just wanted to address that and
do you know something we don't? Because my daughter would be very excited.
I know, wouldn't that be great? That would be great.
let's hope not, Terrence. Thank you.
okay. We're down to winter, on 13,
To the budget and winter tax rates.
okay?
Tim, do you have anything to say related to the 4029? All right. We'll start with
You
that.
waited this long, you might as well say something.
Good morning. This is important, obviously. The winter tax rates will be going out pretty soon to the local treasurers for the local cities and townships. There was 2 of them that had a Headley override because of an election that was done 2 years ago. So I just want to mention that the tax rates did go up. I think one of them was 911 that was done. I don't recall the other one. But if you look on the 4029, it shows that there was an election that was done 2 years ago. So that reset the millage to the new amount. And then those tax rates went back up to the original amounts that they were.
Yeah, juvenile and 911.
Juvenile and 911, that was the 2. Basically, how that happens is it resets it, and then if you have any Headley rollbacks after that, those would apply to those. And so those, since we didn't have a Headley rollback this last year, those went back to the original amounts. So I just want to explain that real quick.
And you'll see, not yet, not a motion yet, but you'll see in the resolution that these are the authorized millage rates. And then in the, be it further resolved that I will highlight, you'll see what the board is able to levy after Headley was applied.
So that'll bring a little bit more revenue than they expected in those 2 areas.
And then we will not deal with the general property tax until June, like you do every year for 2025.
So any questions?
Not yet.
No question?
So we need
Okay.
to move that to the full board, obviously.
We will, we're gonna do it in conjunction with the
Oh, okay.
entire, yeah.
Okay.
So we can do that, sorry. So what you're looking at is the budget. The budget went to Ways and Means last month. That was referred to the public hearing that was held this Tuesday. And we have not amended the budget, so what you're looking at is the same budget, and we would just request that approval and entertain any questions you may have.
I'd move the budget.
And the L 4029.
There's support.
Support. And the, yes.
Moved and supported. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries.
Okay, and then there's one last item in relationship to the budget, and it is, as you know, we have adopted new union contracts and included all of that in the budget. The materials that Mr. Dawson gave you, which are not online, right?
The resolution, I think, is,
Okay.
but the detail is.
So what this does is allow us to implement those into the general employees as well, which is included in the budget. So right now, the general employees are under a policy. That policy is outdated. It actually goes back to 2022. So these are economic changes that we have made and are suggesting, again, in the budget, but it would require action for them to be implemented.
We need a motion?
Yes.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. It passes.
Yes. That covers it, right?
Okay? We're down to limited public comments? Seeing none?